Hiya Steve, great session once again on the range on Tuesday. Just a quick recap on the key points that we covered. One of the main things and the theme for the day really was getting back into flexion, but doing it in the correct sequence. By means of an overview, I mean, we talked about stuff that you should be doing, isolation work during the winter months. What we're seeing here now is a much better version of the swing that you used to make. The elbows are together for much longer, P1 to P2. However, you might want to do some work through winter where you just isolate P1 to P2, maybe P2.5, get a bit of wrist set in there, where you're really squeezing the elbows together, just to tidy up that takeaway and improve the tilt of the shoulders during the early part of the swing. You then maybe want to do some isolation work on the handle location we talked about. Also want to do some work on, keep working should I say, on the P4 position. You can see your P4 on the bottom left, absolutely fantastic. That's your rehearsal swing. When it comes to the swing itself, we do get a little bit longer and we do get a little bit more across the line, even though it doesn't appear across the line. We've had discussions previously where when the shaft's short of parallel, it should look a little bit laid off. So you can see there the club head lines up with the hands. So again, keep making the rehearsal swings. Keep working on squeezing the elbows together, and maybe do a little bit of work on isolating the handle location through impact, which we'll come to in the centre footage on the bottom row shortly. So all in all, much improved swing. Winter work should really consist of ball striking exercises and some isolation work in the net or the mirror. Overall, the key problem we had here today is we still didn't get back into flexion with that lower body quite enough. So the lower body was looking a little bit dead through impact, but again, much better action than we used to make. With a little bit more flexion coming into impact, what we would also have is a P6 position where the knee flex was maintained a little bit more, as we can see there. This is later on in your session. See that right knee getting back into its address flex, putting the right tilt in there nicely as well. There is a little bit of a movement back of the upper axis in this one, but again, going to cut you a little bit of slack until we get used to it. This was back end of your session. Left knee staying flex for longer as the lower body gets back into flexion, P4 to P5, and that was the exercise we gave you, really working on the sequencing of the getting back into flexion. P4 to P5 is the ankle, the knee and the pelvis getting back into flexion. You can see there you do a beautiful job of it. The lowering, or if you will, the flexing of the lower body and the slight rotation of the upper body that encourages is what brings the arms back down to about P4.5 before accumulator 4 starts to fire. See, when you do that, the right elbow drops into position nicely, doesn't get lost behind you. So return to forward flexion, P4 to P5.5, keeping the arms in, not allowing the elbow to get lost behind us, and allowing us to maintain our inclination to the ground. Because of the lack of flexion coming into the golf ball on this one, accumulator 1 and 2 have to get dumped. The P6 position is a little bit too high. We'd want to see that a little bit deeper, but we can deepen that by straightening the arms more, which is definitely not what we need to do because we've got the arms a little bit too straight at impact anyway, or by flexing forward a little bit more. As you flex forward, that also affects the angle of the shaft coming into impact, allowing it to stay on or slightly above the forearm as opposed to getting lost underneath. Now on that particular swing you lined it up pretty well, but your tendency is definitely to get that club dropping underneath a little bit too much and hitting out to the right, pushes, overdraws, struggling to control the rate of closure on the club face, etc. So improving the impact position by learning to flex forward a little bit more, P4 to P5.5, but doing it in the correct order. It's not just we talked about the wood chopper idea, and the wood chopper is a great analogy and a great sort of way of demonstrating forward flexion. Unfortunately, we need to get a little bit more into the detail of it now, getting the right ankle, the right knee, and then the pelvis back into flexion, and then from P4.5 start to get the thoracic back into flexion, as you can see there. So good work at that point. Really strong position there in the swing. In regards to it face on, we're looking much better at P6, much more pressure in the left side, right arm starting to expand at a more appropriate rate, accumulator 4 releasing at a much better rate. Now what we're getting is just a little bit too much of an overtake of the club head through the hitting area. And a lot of that is residual, it's because of what you've done in the past. But in order to accelerate that, what I'd like to see you work on is the exercise we have you here with the TheraBand wrapped around the pillar, and you're just going to stretch the band out on the way through. And that's going to encourage you as you stretch the band out, you're pushing the handle forward. You're doing that with a handle. You can see as you do that, the hips open up nicely. One thing we did warn you about when you were doing this was that the shoulders didn't open up at too great a rate. So pushing the handle forward rather than throwing the club head at the ball. But again, that move you're making there is typical of someone whose right elbow is getting a little bit too far behind them and has to work hard to turn the corner P6 to P7. Leading with the handle, flat left wrist, etc, etc. We also spent a little bit of time working on your short game. The thing we talked about was putting the ball forward, keeping the shaft sitting pretty vertical, utilising the bounce on the club, and in order to encourage a better strike and less of a tendency to thin the ball when on a burr lie, the feeling is to shift the plane to the left. You can do this a number of ways. You could release accumulator 3. Unfortunately, that would take a lot of loft off the golf club, which is counterproductive when we're hitting pitch shots. The other way to do it is to release 1 and 2 a little bit earlier, which when you're doing the super high lob shot, you might want to do that, especially if it's on a burr lie. But the main way to do it for you is to just soften the elbows during the downswing. You can see they're trying to keep the butt of the club as low, as close to you as possible through the hitting area, or certainly in the finish, just encouraging the club or plane to shift to the left. So you're going to keep the club nice and low to the ground on the way back. Slight shift to the left as you start down, and then a softening of the elbows as you come through the golf ball, keeping the butt of the club low to the ground. You can see that you nip that one off beautifully off that range mat, and a nice softening of the elbows in the finish. Very good work. I look forward to seeing your progress. Feel free to send me an email with a swing on it anytime you feel it's necessary. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to ask. Look forward to working with you again in the coming months. If I don't see you between now and Christmas, have a great one, and I look forward to working with you in the new year. Well done.